And it is the Tuesday edition of What's Happening. Tomorrow we got Brother John in his usual spot, brought to you by Kennett Trust Bank right after the 7 o'clock news block. Brian Mitchell's going to pop in here at 7:30 on Thursday. Look forward to talking with him. And this morning on phone, we've really been looking forward to our conversation this morning with Harold Walker. Hey, good morning, Harold.
Hey, good morning. How you doing, Steve?
Well, I tell you what, for a summer morning in the Boot Heel, I was telling you on the phone, 92% humidity. You don't remember those days at all, do you?
No, I can't remember that at all. No.
Yeah, especially in Bragg City on the floodways, man.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Or in Vietnam, for that matter.
Gulf Stream. Vietnam. Well, Vietnam was a little drier, I think.
Was it a little drier? But 92% humidity. I don't think so.
I'm kidding.
I thought so.
Yeah, it was wet. It was hot. It was muggy. It was everything.
Oh man, that's a fact. Well, we're glad to have Harold Walker with us today, and of course he is a native of Bragg City, and we're going to talk about his first book in just a little bit and get an update on that. But I know you. You know, Bragg City's always on your mind, though, no matter where you're at, though, brother, before we start talking about the grotto. I know, man, yeah, you're a Bragg City guy.
Oh, yeah, Bragg City's home. It's always was. And the floodways was my backyard.
Oh, man. Yeah, a little gumbo and a little floodways and a few mosquitoes and a lot of humidity, yeah.
A lot of dragonflies, too,
A lot, yeah, no doubt about that. Well, we're really glad to have you here today to talk about, it's actually your third book, your second in a series on your in Days in Vietnam. It's the Grotto book, too, and I got it in my left hand right here. I've got about 40% finished with it, and, man, it's another great read, Harold.
Well, thank you very much. It was the experience that I had in Vietnam was like a lot of guys, and before I get too far, I'd like to say hello to a couple of guys in Kennett that keep me in touch. One's Ron Morgan. He's kept me in touch when I worked in Riggs Wholesale a long time ago as a summer in college, and Tom Crunk Jr.
Oh yeah,
he's everywhere involved in everything. So
I know it.
A couple of those good buddies of mine.
Oh and, yeah. We and I know a couple others who when I mentioned that you were going to be on the show, they've got some Bragg City connections and Wardell connections, and they were going to say they were going to be listening this morning too. So we got some folks listening today.
Absolutely, but when you say you're from somewhere in Missouri, I always have to say, well, do you know where Kennett is?
Yeah.
And then you can go from Kennett to find the rest of them.
That's right. Well, when I say I'm from Missouri, they always say, "Are you from Branson?" No, we're not from Branson. We're on the opposite end of the state. Well,
absolutely.
Well, we're going to talk about your second Grotto book, and to give people some background here before we get in kind of to the book itself. It's about your days in Vietnam, flying those helicopters, right?
Yeah. We began. I began flying in Vietnam in November of '69. After a few days training, we did about 330 hours of training. And went into the operation. One of the things that I think is about the Marine Corps, which is it's a real closed unit. You know, it's once you're in the Marine Corps, you never get out of it.
Right.
It's just like it's one of those things. It's like an old gnarled uncle. You know, you don't want to necessarily get along with him all the time, but you got to have him. That's one of those things.
Right. I've never known anybody in the Marines who was still not a Marine. They'll say so true. Quick. Yes, and yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
But pardon me. The big thing about this was the Marine Corps at that time, when in October of '69, people remember this from our age, 50 plus years ago, Steve, I might add, that the Nixon administration was pulling us out. And it was called Operation Keystone, Keystone. And I went in with my other friends into Vietnam under that operation, which was really to redeploy the Marines out of Vietnam. So this book, which I had planned on writing one book, and then I got into it and I wrote the first book, and it got me through 3 months.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I better try another one. So this next second one got me through till June 1. So the third one will go from July to November. But the trail through there and the people I met and the things that happened have been a constant remembrance of mine, and I just wanted to put it down in writing, just to have people know what people did.
Well, and it's really detailed in a lot of ways, and we'll get into that in a second, but I guess you need to tell our listeners what it's called, the Grotto, Book 1, Book 2. I assume it'll be Book 3. What's the Grotto?
Oh, the Grotto. Well, the Grotto, we stayed in different little Quonset huts in Phu Bai, Vietnam, or Republic of Vietnam, Phu Bai. And the Army folks out there will remember that. It was a big Army post also. And in that, had these Quonset huts, similar to the kind that you see on TV every once in a while. And the guys then, they would name them. They would name their hut, their hooch, and the people in it. And so one of them was called the Morgue, like the Morgue. I thought, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're still walking around laughing and talking, and that's the morgue where they sleep. And so and there was various names. And when we went into the grotto, into the old Quonset hut, it was moldy, mossy, nasty, and it'd been there for years. And one of the guys in there, who was a really good friend of mine, Don McLaughlin, he's from Arizona, and he said, this thing is just like an old cave. And I said, well, it's a grotto. A cave's a grotto. And he said, yeah, a mossy grotto. There it was. So his name's El Mossy Grotto. And so we just shortened that to Grotto, and that's the way we stayed from then on.
Yeah.
With the same group of guys I came in with throughout that year.
Well, it was more than one grotto, though, right? One.
Yes,
yeah.
We moved from Phu Bai. My first book takes us down to February, from November 10 of 1969 to February 14th, 70, and that takes us. We moved from Phu Bai down to Da Nang, which was had the major air base was at Da Nang, and we were in a base called Marble Mountain. It's a helicopter base, and it was situated at the base of the Marble Mountains, which is noted geological landmark of Da Nang, and that's where they get the Marble Mountain. And from that point, they were pulling all of our helicopters back in from the outer recesses, which was Chu Lai and other places, and bringing them back to one site, because from that point they would redeploy us back to the United States or wherever. And we didn't know how long that would take. So we're in there just basically knowing we're going home at one point. But you have to forget that, because each day you had to go out and support the grunts. We went out and supported the grunts in every manner possible, just like the Army helicopter pilots. We were all helicopter pilots, and it was a thick sky full of them. And so that's what we did for the rest of the year. We had various things happen, and that's why I wanted to document them. We had instances of incredible heroism. We had instances of incredible coincidence, and we had friends killed just like the other people did, and
sure.
and a lot of us survived. But with those that have survived, I think we've all been in our reunions now. We have the Vietnam Helicopter Pilot Association, which is Army, pretty much, and there was Marines that were trained in the Army helicopter program also. And then we had the Marine Corps program, which is Papa Smoke, and Papa Smoke was for the purposes when we were going to a zone where we had to pick up someone, put somebody off or something. We'd ask them to pop a smoke to see which way the wind was blowing.
Right.
And so Papa Smoke became kind of a cliche. And now we have those big reunions, and we're going to have one in September in St. Louis, and then later in November at Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Oh, I like that. I like that second idea, Hilton Head. I like that idea quite a bit.
You wouldn't believe how many guys want to go to that one. So it's cool. But No, this story, I think it's a personal story, but it's also me telling the stories of what I saw.
And it's also a story of the guys around you.
Yes.
There's so many characters in the both books. I'm into Grotto book 2, obviously, but some of these guys. Let's just, for example, the guys who were with you in the Grotto. It was a group of characters, to say the least.
Really was. It really was. Really was. We had myself, and then we had Alan C. Allen. That was his name. His first name was Allen. His last name was Allen. And A.C. Allen, and he has a tremendous background, and he remained in the Marine Corps, and then in the Navy for the remainder of his career. We had Gary Rainey, who became a colonel in the Marine Corps. We had Don McLaughlin, who became a senior vice president of the Apache program under Boeing. We had Eric McGrew, who became a Delta Airlines pilot, and he was one of the few pilots that actually was trying to skyjack him, and he talked the guy out of a 45 caliber pistol he had with him.
Wow!
And at the Atlanta airport, and the thing we knew about Eric was he was not going to take that aircraft off, and the people in the tower knew that. So eventually, the guy that we had the pistol gave up and quit trying, and so that's his claim to fame. And we had one of the guys, Marty Lyman. He's out of Salt Lake City, and he became a colonel. So the guys, the extraordinary thing about this was we came in together in Fubai in November 10th, November 11th of '69, and we got into this little group, our group, and we remained in a group for the remainder of the year. That didn't happen very often. That you had a group that was and at the end of the year, not one of us had been hurt or harmed in any manner. No Purple Hearts, but there was plenty of my friends distinguished flying crosses that went into that little hooch.
Well, you had some harrowing experiences. I just finished when I was, as I said, I'm past this point in the book now, but I remember reading a pretty detailed account. I think it's your CO you're riding with. That was quite a harrowing, one of your little trips in the helicopter, that you barely made. You thought you wasn't going to make it, brother.
Absolutely. It was Colonel Bancroft, and we called him Blades.
Yeah, did he have any business at all flying a helicopter?
No, he didn't. And he would be the first to tell you that. The Marine Corps is they have a lot of different kinds of aircraft, and when these the first two are A4 pilots and maybe some of the F4 pilots, they would transition to helicopters, and then they came back for the second tour. And there'd be different reasons for doing that. Sometimes the Marine Corps needed them in out of the fixed wing, or they wanted out of fixed wing, and they'd come back as helicopter pilots. But most of them came back as a senior officer and not knowing much about helicopters. And so that's what happened with Colonel Bancroft when we was trying to pull a medevac, and I was his co-pilot, and he tore the left main mount right off the aircraft. And
oh man!
I thought we was crashing into the rice paddy, but somehow we survived, and I got back, and he managed to catch it on fire right there in the tarmac area of the
and that one the
squadron.
And what's amazing, that's not the only incident he had like that.
No. But he was the first guy to come in and tell you. He said he said they told me in the zones they would say go forward, and he'd go forward, and he'd go back, left, right. He said, okay, sir, you have all 6 blades have been hitting a tree. Now you can land. So but he was a good guy. We liked him, and he knew his limitations.
Well,
the ones that were most dangerous are the ones that didn't understand their limitations.
I can imagine that's true, but you do what you had to do, right?
Oh yeah. The whole purpose for our being there and alive was the Marine grunt, the guy down in the trenches, the guy who was there, and all he could see day in and day out was the jungle. and we at least had opportunity to, to be in Da Nang and fly and be in the air. And every opportunity we had to help them, we did it. The one, if they had R&R, if they were going on R&R and they were out in the middle of nowhere, Thong Duck Corridor near Laos, we would get them and get them out of there. So my admiration for them has never died. It's just become stronger.
Well, and of course, you mentioned everything you did for them, the R&R, but also anything, and obviously taking them, bringing them back, wounded, those killed, everybody, anything and everything you said, right? Everything.
Right, medevacs, anything and everything. CH-46s were the medium lift helicopter in the Marine Corps, and we were the workhorse. And we had gunships that flew along with us to protect us. And so we had a crew of 5, a pilot, co-pilot, and we had a crew chief, and then we'd had 2 50 caliber gunners. And sometimes we call it a stinger on the tail with a M60, because at one point you don't want to lower your ramp, let our Marines run off, then let the NVA run on.
Yeah.
So it's and that was a rumor that had happened earlier up in Quang Tri Province before we got there, when there was fighting directly, the NVA divisions coming straight across the DMZ into Quezon and Con Thien and the Ashall Valley, and all the Army guys that was in 24th Corps and up in that same area will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They did Pork Chop Hill up there too. That was Army. It was incredible. Terrible.
Yeah, and people are familiar with that and somewhat, and you did this for about a year, and it probably and it's given you a lifetime of experiences since. That's kind of what resonates with me a little bit as I've read the books. When I got out and everybody got out, a lot of guys stayed in and made a career of it, like I mentioned. I didn't. I got out, and my wife Kathy was from Malden. She was a Blanton, and she's from Malden girl. And we came back and I became the principal of the high school at North Pemiscot in Wardell. And I was doing that for a couple of years, and I got I was just getting nervous and felt like I needed to do something else. So that's when I decided to go into the U.S. Treasury Department's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms. Right.
At that time, it was called Operation Q, Concentrated Urban Enforcement, and it was put into effect by President Nixon, and then he resigned, and then his President Ford continued that, and I was put in with a group of Marines and Army and Navy veterans in Chicago to work on guns in the gangs. And I worked for 18 months in various undercover positions, and just making cases, buying guns, and working the streets of Chicago. That was my war. And I always felt like, when I was in that helicopter, I could always have a good meal, and I could wake up the next morning, and those grunts had that. They didn't have that, and it always was a problem for me to think of that. And as soon as we could get out there and get them anything, we did.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was my time to be in the trenches.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Well,
that's what I did.
Well, as you read the book, and that's true with Grotto Book 1, Book 2 is certainly the same. You share your experiences and different things with different people, but it's also it's a very well researched book. I mean, there's a lot of footnotes which tells me that I've done a little bit of writing anyway, that you had to put a lot of time in researching to make sure, I guess, your facts and figures were correct and that sort of stuff. Well,
the thing is, what I had was I've always been a note taker and kind of a journal writer. I kept things, and after I left Vietnam, I dug out all my materials in 1974. I began putting all my notes and memories and recollections together into one volume, and that volume was 174 pages, single spaced. And I made, pardon me, and I made 4 copies of that. one for my brothers, and one for my sons, Matthew and Lucas, and myself. And I used that as a blueprint for this.
Okay.
So I did my career, and I came back and started writing about this, and it's just taken over. I mean, the Marines and the people that have read this book are enamored with it, and they love it. And I had two generals. One was a first lieutenant with me in Vietnam. His name is Fred McCorkle. He was a lieutenant general, retired. And then another one was Mike DeLong, who's no longer with us. He passed away. But he was the deputy for Schwarzkopf in Desert Storm. And those guys, they all liked the book. They loved the book, and they said it was more of a reference book than anything else.
Well,
they said it's a source book.
Well,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and it certainly is that, of course, woven around your great storytelling. But anybody who lived in that era, who was part of the war, who was in any way part of it, will appreciate what you have written. But also those of us who were not, and those many who have come since. If you want to know what went on at that time with some just regular guys like you,
yes.
These are books that you need to read. That's for sure.
This wasn't written for political purposes or even publication when I started writing. This was written for our guys and the people that were around me and the guys in our squadron, which was HMM 262. And in that frame, we had 4 squadrons there. We had over 200 pilots there that would get in. We knew each other. We became a family in MAG 16, Marine Air Group 16. It was like a family. And there was, I got to mention, 2 or 3 of these things in there. I won't go into greater detail about it, but one of them was from one of our fellow Marines from Missouri, and he was a crew chief, and his name was Joe Johnson. And Joe lives up in central Missouri, and he was a crew chief, and at the time, he did something remarkable. I knew about it at the time, but I had to go back and research all of it to get it correct. And that was when the aircraft commander with Joe was hit by one bullet and went through and killed him. The bullet came out of him and went into the right arm of the crew chief, of the co-pilot, making him unable to fly. And then when the helicopter became unstable, it threw Joe into the area where he was close to the cockpit. He ended up going into the cockpit, sitting in the lap of the dead man, and flying the helicopter back to Marine Air Group 16.
Wow.
And that, I didn't know the whole details to that, and I couldn't believe it. The pilot's name was Joseph Devlin, and he was a really good guy, and the crew and the co-pilot was a Major Locke, and they were all going to die. I mean, it was going to happen, and one bullet hit that helicopter, went through the window, killed the pilot, wound and missed and hit the crew chief. I'm sorry, the co-pilot in the right arm. Yeah. And Joe was there and flew it back.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's amazing. I call him every day to say, "Are you really real?"
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah. I hate to do this, Harold, but we're gonna quickly run out of time. I did want us to talk just a couple of minutes about Murder on the Floodways.
Oh yeah.
Which is your first book that everybody loves around here. And I know last time you and I got together on the air, you had a movie guy with you. How's that going? I got about 5 minutes left, so let's talk about that.
I'm gonna give it to you quick here. That guy's name was John Ahrens.
Yeah.
John Ahrens is a screenwriter, and he works with a lot of folks in Hollywood. And he started working on it because he loved the book, and he started working on it. So what's happened now? The pandemic put a stop on everything pretty much for the last year and a half, it seems like. But the draft was almost complete, and the draft is being worked on right now directly. I'm working with him directly on revisions, and the goal is to complete it by Labor Day of this year and then it'll be in Hollywood, by September and October, and then they shop it around to the different movie folks to see if anyone's interested. It's like a book about a book, and the screenplay is a book, but it's not. But they put it together like a movie, and that's the only thing I have a problem with every once in a while. Is, that didn't happen just like that. Well, no, yeah, I know, but boy, that's a good scene. That'd be a good scene.
Yeah, you got to Hollywood it just a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, but some great characters in that book, so I can imagine that it would. The screenplay would be a little different kind of experience, but what you're telling us is you're hopeful that's going to be. That's going to work out here pretty soon, or at least be shopped around pretty soon.
The thing is, all these things you have to have the screenplay written by a noted screenwriter, which he is, and then people take a look at it and then they see it. But it takes in a lot of characters, and it'll be a Southeast Missouri book.
Oh, that describes the boot heel so well. And if I will just say, to our listeners, if you have not read Murder on the Floodways, I would urge you to do that as soon as possible. That'll be a great time for you, as well as The Grotto. Yeah. My friend, I'm going to have to get out of here. You know how radio is. I got a hard break. I got a hard break coming up here in about 2 minutes, we're going to have to get out. But I want to recommend The Grotto. I just got a text from Julie Orff, and she said, The Grotto's at the Dunklin County Library, so check it out. People can check it out.
Thank you, Julie. Okay.
Harold Walker, man, I love you, man. And, by the way, I did want to say real quick, I got 30 seconds, but, on footnote 192, you mentioned my uncle.
I do.
You do. That's right. Yeah, another Bragg City boy.
Oh, he was a hero to me, I'll tell you that.
Well, I appreciate the mention of my uncle in footnote 192, my friend.
There you go, you bet.
I really appreciate that, and we will look forward to talking with you again soon, and I hope everybody will get the Grotto book too and read it, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Back to Kennett. Take care.
We'll look forward to seeing you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.